This is a Momentum Media production.
Welcome to the Smart Property Investment Show, the podcast by investors for investors.
Oh, g'day, how you going? Phil Tarrant here, host of the Smart Property Investment Show. Hope you're well. Hope you enjoyed the Christmas break. This madness at our family over the Christmas period. Lots of people hanging around. Nice to put my feet up and relax a bit and take stock of what's been going on. And we're sort of in between that nice middle gap at the moment between Chrissy and New Year's, which means that there's very, very little going on work-wise. And it's probably the only sort of 4 or 5 days of the year where no one schedules anything except for Smart Property Investment podcasts. And that's what we like to do. I've got joining me in the studio. He's come in. He lives down the road, so it's okay. Lachlan Vidler, Director of Atlas Property Group. We're going to have a chat today around all things 2023. And I know everyone's doing this at the moment. What's 2023 look like? You just got to pick up any paper and there's about 1,000 property experts telling you what 2023 is looking like, trying to make some sense of the macro and microeconomic landscape, what's going on with the world, what's happening here in Australia, coming off COVID, all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of commentary around it, but we're going to go straight to the source with a guy that knows. Lachlan, how you going?
G'day, Phil. How you doing?
All right, mate. How's your Chrissy? Good?
Good.
Yeah?
Good.
What's going on?
Oh, there's always something going on, you know that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It's good.
I think it's nice to have a break, though. Everyone's, I think it's been such a big year.
You're from Sydney originally?
Yeah.
Yes? No? Yeah. So family's still here?
Yeah, family's here.
All right, good stuff. Was Santa good to you this year?
Santa's always good. Yeah. I think Santa sees how hard we work and says, have a little break.
So you're on the good list?
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, I believe so based off the presents, but yeah.
So Santa was sitting there up in Lapland working out what property investors been up to over 2022. What suburbs are on the good list and what suburbs are on the bad list?
Well, I think if we were having this conversation 6 months ago, Santa would have said every suburb was on the good list. And I think coming to the end of it, I think he'd probably be saying those that had the good fundamentals are still there, and those that were just treading water and looked good on the surface, they've slowly come off and they had coal in their stockings.
So is there more properties, more suburbs on Santa's good list or bad list at the moment?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
More on the good or more on the bad?
'Tis the season and all that. We've got to use this as a metaphor.
'Tis the season. More on the good or more on the bad? I think that if I'm being really honest, I think that there's probably more on the good than on the bad, but I think that there's a big chunk that's probably sitting in the middle, which have really good Christmas fundamentals. However, there could be factors outside of the suburbs' control that might, push it one way or another.
So I guess the big question is that as an asset class, is probably on the good list or the bad list?
Well, I mean, I might be a little bit biased, but I'm going to say it's on the good list. But I think more than anything else, for me, one of the big reasons it stays on the good list is that there's still a lot of performance out there from a growth perspective, but there's also a lot of performance out there from a yield perspective. And when you combine the two, you could be very, very, very comfortably getting above 10% total returns out of property. And for all those share market people out there, we all know.
Good luck.
Yeah, we all know the share market's barely been keeping its head afloat, let alone getting towards double digits of total return. So I think that, as an asset class, very bullish still, very bullish.
So who is the property investment Grinch? Which area of property is that off the plan apartments?
I'd say anything that's building at the moment is a bit of a Grinch.
True.
It's so challenging. And I mean, as everyone would know from the myriad of podcasts I've done with you, and it always comes up, I'm not a believer in the brand new stuff, whether it's house and land or whether it's apartments, whatever it is. But even if I put my own opinions to the side, it's a challenging area of the industry because material shortages, costs going up, labor's, you can't find it. So we actually had a client who was looking at selling an existing property that they had in favor of cashing in and then going and buying a block of land to build on it. And I literally said, mate, you're crazy. Why would you do that? You're not going to get this property built for 2 years, maybe even 3 if you're if you pick the wrong builder. Yeah, it's a tough part of the industry for sure.
Yeah, it is. And look, it's good. We had a bit of fun around this Christmas thing. I'm just trying to think what else from Christmas I can bring in to give some sort of property reference, and no doubt I'll think of that over the course of this. If you're tuning in on the, I'm wearing shorts today. It is and a linen shirt. It is relaxation mode. But personally, I caught up with my accountant just before Chrissy, and had a good old chat strategically around what the world looks like. And we spoke about, these sort of tactical options and opportunities for 2023. We'll get sort of into that towards the back end of this podcast. I'm happy to sort of share where I'm with it all. But, a lot of people are trying to pull apart this current economic climate. No one knows. We're recording this. Obviously, the Reserve Bank doesn't meet in a couple of days' time, which would be the start of January. It's on holidays in Jan, and they meet again in February. I've sort of spoken about this. They're going to get too full, and you're quite comfortable. You, sorry to digress. You teach at university, right?
I do. Yeah, I teach at UNSW.
So you're happy to talk about economics and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, look, economics isn't my greatest area, but I'm comfortable enough.
Yeah. So what do you teach there?
I teach in the business school. So I teach data analysis subjects. I teach general business subjects. I've taught accounting subjects. So
you're an accountant by trade, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I have a finance master's.
A finance master's?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, we can talk about then sort of the economy.
Yeah, sure.
So people are trying to work it out, right? And everyone, it's really funny these days. You used to jump in taxis and stuff and they'd ask about the cricket and it's like everyone now is an armchair economic forecaster. And to be fair, our economic forecasters don't often get it right.
No.
They think back to COVID and some very smart people and some very big banks told us probably it was going to drop by 40%, right? They got that one wrong. But everyone's now an armchair economic commentator.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which is cool.
Yeah.
It's okay to talk about. And, everyone's now, and one of the good things around tougher economic environments, and I saw this sort of happen as a result of the GFC, right? Like a lot more people thought they outsourced their financial future to other people to look after them. And I think what the GFC told everyone was like, that's not a bad strategy to actually use professionals to help you out, but you need to be accountable and take responsibility for your own stuff, right? Like, and that's what the GFC did. And I think that sort of carried on. I think COVID, a lot more people have taken responsibility of their financial future. I think the environment that we're moving into or have moved into right now and uncertainty, people are starting to take a lot more responsibility for their financial future. They're trying to understand the drivers of what happens to the economy. And a lot of people still don't really understand why the central bank, the Reserve Bank of Australia, is making your mortgage more expensive when the cost of living is going up, right? Like people just still sit there and shake their heads, but everyone now is an armchair commentator. When you go to barbecues now and dinner parties, you don't just talk about property, you talk about the economy, right?
Absolutely. You do.
So that's the environment that we're in, and no doubt a lot of your clients sort of come in there with some sort of preconceived idea of what the economy is doing, and therefore they're making decisions around it.
Oh, I can't even begin to talk. We could do a whole podcast on some of those things that people come into the conversations with.
Let's talk about it. How misaligned are they?
I think the biggest problem is, and I know that obviously, you guys are a media company and you guys are the good guys in this, right? Because you put out programs like Smart Property Investment as well as, all the other stuff that you guys do. So you guys are the good ones in this. But so much of the media as a whole, and I mean, we always say we just shouldn't talk about the property industry as a whole because there's so many different ones. So it's probably not fair to call the media industry the same thing. But generally speaking, the media industry is just there to sell, right? It's clickbait, it's catchy headlines. I think middle of the year, a few people on LinkedIn were going and taking screenshots of like 3 or 4 articles on the same media website that had, opposing views all posted on the same day, right? So it's all about that. And unfortunately, for a lot of people who either, maybe their skill set is not aligned with that or they don't have a background or an education in it, fair enough, they read things or they listen to things and it becomes, the gospel to them. They go, oh, this is how it is. This is the way life is. This is the way the economy is, whatever it is. And it then sets them up with some of these, misconceptions about different things. And it might be like the classic one that I always get is, and I'm not even kidding, I reckon 2 out of every 3 phone calls I have with a potential client, it'll kick off at some point with, so the property market's going down. And I'll say, okay, so what's the property market? They go, just all property's going down. I was like, mate, okay. We bought a property 6 months ago. It's actually gone up 12%. Oh, okay. And that's just a classic easy one, right? Let alone getting into the fundamentals of economics and what's going on in the environment around us. So it's hard because it makes people stressed, makes them worried.
Yeah.
To be honest, sometimes even I wake up some days and go,
is it really that bad?
Yeah, like the day feels a bit heavy already just because I've watched the news and read a couple of articles on AFR or something like that.
It can be depressing.
Yeah.
It can be depressing. It's really tough. And what you're talking about there, Lachlan, is as a student, this sort of stuff is misinformation.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a big difference between disinformation and misinformation. Disinformation is the deliberate manipulation of incorrect information to shape an outcome. Misinformation is when someone takes on something thinking that's correct and they just
Yeah.
perpetrate it, right?
Yeah.
And it happens a lot inside it, and it's probably a thesis in itself, right? Misinformation as a mechanism for influencing property market decision making, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's a huge thing.
Yeah.
And if you spend any time on social media, you'll see so much misinformation where people just sprout what other people have told them.
Yeah.
So this goes back to the point that you have so many armchair commentators now who are propagating misinformation in property investment. And there'll be people out there listening to this going, well, you do that, Phil. You come up with an idea but I'm conscious about it, right?
Yeah.
And it comes back to the point. So if I get a piece of information, I question it and I interrogate it and I query it and I go, okay, well, that's factual. I'll take that on and I'll try and dilute the misinformation you see in property markets. And it's just a huge challenge, right? But people are setting themselves up, and the point being 2023, people are setting themselves up for what they're going to do in 2023 based on bias of information they have now generated in many cases by misinformation. And that's not me on a soapbox or anything, but you see that now in the comment that people just go, oh, the property market's going down.
Yeah.
Okay, explain.
So my favorite thing when we're talking about misinformation is statistics. And the reason I love this one is because, especially going off what I was saying before about media, how it's about selling clicks and all of that. So it's about getting people in. My favorite one, and this is actually something I urge everyone to do, is every statistic can be reversed, right? But the media is often only ever going to tell you what appears to be the sexy story of the day, right? So they might say something like, over 5% or over 10% of homeowners are facing extreme mortgage stress. And people go, oh my God, that's horrific. Can you believe that? Flip it. Over 90% of people are fine.
Yeah.
But
over 90% of people don't have mortgage stress.
Yeah, exactly right. But because of the way the statistic is put out there, it makes people feel worried. It makes them feel nervous, and it's not true. And it's funny because in one of the subjects I teach, there was an article.
Do you teach undergraduates or postgraduate?
Yeah, I teach predominantly undergraduate. I've done a little bit of postgrad, but predominantly undergrad. But in one of the subjects, it was the data subject. I won't name authors or publications, but there was an article that came out from a very reputable property media source.
Wasn't Smart Property Investment.
It was not Smart Property Investment. We can cross that one off the list.
Right, done.
And it was actually about mortgage stress, and it came out in 2020 or 2021. And I discussed it with my students, and I also spoke to some of the staff about it because I was trying to get the point across to them, what I was just saying about statistics. Like, it's factual, but it's not accurate to represent things in a certain way. And all of my students, right, and these are people who are 18 years old, they've got certain views about the world, right? Some of them are starting to grow up quite politically active and things like that. And for a lot of them, property investors are a dirty word.
Yeah.
Evil, right? Yeah. It's ruining our economy. As soon as we got through that 20-minute conversation where we pulled apart every single bit of this article, pulled out all these statistics, I had a room of about 20, 24, 25 first-year uni students going, oh, it's actually really not that bad at all. I don't know why people are so concerned about this.
And that comes down to manipulation of ideas, the consciousness of the media you consume, and then also the bias that you get through that media. And if you're smart enough, and the smart people I know have read multiple sources of information, they don't rely on social media to feed them the information that they should be consuming, because there is absolute bias around that, around the algorithms and your watching habits, right? Like, read The Guardian, read the Daily Telegraph, read The Australian, read The Age, read the Sydney Morning Herald, read the AFR, and you're going to get a blend of information. However, a lot of people, and I think detrimental, bringing back this to property investment, is a lot of people negatively view property investment and therefore don't move fast enough. People get more conservative as they get older. It's just a natural sort of process of aging and time. Most students are politically active. That's the most politically active of their life, where they want to challenge the status quo. They're a lot more left-leaning, largely as university students, but then you see those left-leaning people become quite conservative over time. There's a realization going, wow, that bias can fundamentally shape your ability to have a really comfortable retirement, because it might lag your ability to start investing by 10 to 20 years.
Yeah.
And go back and ask any of these politically active, and this is not what this podcast is about. You go and ask some politically active, now conservative people who are left-leaning, probably what they wish they did earlier as they sort of move into the twilight of their retirement.
Yeah.
They're probably going to go, yeah, I wish I was started investing earlier. So it's good that you're challenging that. But this is the point. This is around the bias that you have around how you're going to approach property investing and wealth creation. And ASIC hates the term wealth creation, so we'll call it property investing. into 2023 is going to be dictated the bias of your perception towards property investment today. Property investors at the moment in time. Interest rates, Lachlan, as you know, most people will be paying interest rates now with a 5 in it. That's going to move into a 6. That's based on the difference of the cash rate and what banks charge you. It's not a bad time to be investing in property. So let's talk about 2023. We'll just go to a break beforehand. Stay with us, back in a moment. Welcome back, everyone. Phil Tarrant, host of the Smart Property Investment Show with Lachlan Biddle. He's director of Atlas Property Group, good friend of Smart Property Investment. He's been on the podcast quite a lot over 2022. His last appearance as we near New Year's Eve. Thanks for coming on, Lachlan. Give me a sense for 2023. Why is it going to be so interesting, mate?
Well, I think, unfortunately for those listening, I'm not even going to talk about it from a property perspective here. I think more than anything, right, property is a function of the world around us, okay? Yep. Like people need homes, and that's fine, and investment. But I think more than anything, 2023 is going to be a really interesting year based on the other things that are going on and how that will then translate back through into the property markets, right? And we'll talk about that, I think, a little bit later. But I think, the first thing that really comes to mind is we've just finished our first full year of, I'm going to say non-COVID year, and, take that with a grain of salt because obviously there's still COVID around. And as we obviously are doing this today, right, numbers are still, exist. So it's not gone, but it's the first year where we can say it, right, there haven't really been lockdowns. There hasn't really been massive disruptions to life. And I think 2023 is going to be really interesting because we've had that. Okay, so 2022 to me was like a year of returning to normality, right? We tested the waters, seeing what's working, right? Work from home, for example, that was such a big feature of 2020, 2021, and arguably 2022, right? But now we've had that as one example, but other things as well, right? We've had that.
So it's normal now.
It's normal, yep. But now we're moving into our second year of a non-COVID normal type of world. And it means that suddenly it's not like we're doing things for the first time again. It's not like there's anything, it's not necessarily exciting anymore to go, oh, cool, we can go down the pub, or we can go to a sporting game, or we can go to the shops when we don't have to, be so worried or not be nervous about these lockdowns. And I think that makes 2023 interesting because it's almost like we can start to, take a bit of an eraser to what's gone on and go, okay, well, now we're returning to the world that we were all living in maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So where's that going to take us? So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, and they reckon traits of high-performing people, and a lot of it's based on sort of philosophical approach to life, but high-performing people typically don't let the past dictate their future. And I think putting that in the sense for property investment, don't let the past and what's happened in the past, and I'm talking about this COVID period. By the way, some areas are still 45% up, Adelaide and Tassie and Hobart, for example, from pre-pandemic levels in terms of prices, right? So don't let the past dictate the future. And the same applies inside of property investment. All this idea of like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I've got to wait till things normalise. I've got to see how COVID plays out. There's so much uncertainty in the marketplace. What are we going to do? That's now behind us, right? Like it is absolutely behind us. So the smart investors now aren't letting the past dictate the future. They're adapting to and appreciating the environment that we're in right now, the fact that, and I hate the term, the new normal is here. So it's just normal. This is just, and newsflash also, it is a normal market. Interest rates are going up. It's normal for interest rates to go up and down. Interest rates are sort of heading towards, 3.5%, the official cash rate. What you pay at the cash register, if you want to call it that, and your mortgage is 6%. That's a normal market. So you're in a normal market. So forget about what's happened. Think about what is moving forward. So this is the environment we're operating within. Smart people have the right mindset in terms of how they're going to approach it. As I mentioned, I called up my accountant pre-Chrissy, and we're like, now this is a golden moment. It's a golden moment in time. If you can get beyond the fact that interest rates are going up, they're normal, by the way. You're going to get a period of time of stability, I believe, in interest rates. And there's now some banks, Lachlan, saying that there's going to be interest rate reductions in 2024, right? Like, this is a normal cycle market. So it looks good, and you obviously work inside a property and you advise clients on what to do. There's going to be challenges though in 2023. It's not all sort of, beer and skittles. It's not smooth sailing. It's still going to be tough, right? It's going to be tough, serviceability being one of them. But how are you framing that sort of, what are the areas you need to be considerate of in order to have an adaptive approach around it?
Sorry, just before I touch on that, I just want to come back to something you said about, for example, Adelaide and Hobart being up. I just pulled out my phone and I took I took a good screenshot of something that Domain did really recently.
Yeah, I know the report.
You're talking, yeah. So I've got it here, right? So just for the people listening, the worst performing market to today, right, after this whole
This is
COVID
from
upswing.
pre-pandemic, right?
This is from, so this is the upswing now with the downturn, and we've got video going, so everyone who watches the YouTube can see me doing that in inverted commas.
My kids tell me if you do inverted commas, it's not real. That's what they tell me.
Right, so the upswing plus this, this hypothetical downturn, where are we at now, right? So the worst one is Melbourne at 16.7% peak to trough, which is not that bad, but Melbourne also had the smallest upswing, or almost the smallest upswing of anyone, right? So it's not really there. But then when you look at some of the other ones, like Sydney, almost 30, Brisbane, 36, Adelaide, 47, Perth, 22, Canberra, 41, Darwin, 30, and Hobart, 47. And people are starting to, Did I
remember that right? Did I say 45 or 47?
I thought you just said 40s. I think you said 40s.
Yeah. It was Adelaide and Hobart went up the most.
Yeah. And
they went up 50 and come back 4 or 5, right? By memory.
So Adelaide went up. Okay, so Adelaide went up 47. It's just now flat in this hypothetical downturn. And then Hobart went up 52 and it's down 3. Yeah. Right? Or 4. But look, I don't want to call anyone out, but I do want to say something a bit blunt as well, which is, like, people sometimes need to be able to look backwards to go, hang on a minute, the world's not ending. And from some of the numbers I just rattled off, right, some people are up 30, 40, 50% overall. And that's just medians, right? So some people are going to be a lot more. Yeah. Of course, some will be a bit less. But for the most part,
it's a normal market.
Absolutely.
And this is it. Don't forget about what's happened in the past. That's happened, by the way. Like, you've had this uplift, and is that going to continue? Probably not. But to sort of make 50% and give away 3 or 4%, I don't know anyone who's, if that was a share market, you'd be singing from the rooftops, right? Rather than sticking your heads in your hands going, oh, the world's going to end Chicken Little and all that sort of stuff. So, but it's not going to be an easy 2023, that said. No. So how are you reading it, mate?
Well, I think for me, there's probably 3 really big parts that are going to decide whether or not it's going to be a challenging year. All right. And I think that the first one for me, and it's going to come as no surprise to anyone, is going to be the finance side. So ultimately, property markets, I'm going to call it now, are very simple. It's supply and demand, right? How we measure that and the analysis, that's the complicated part, but ultimately supply and demand. So I think on the finance side, realistically, when borrowing capacities come down, if we go back one step further, when interest rates go up, borrowing capacities reduce. And if borrowing capacities reduce, hypothetically, there should be less demand, all right? Is that normal? Absolutely, right? We just came out of, 0.1% cash rate?
Yep.
The lowest it's ever been. I don't think we could ever possibly get lower. I don't doubt we'll ever see 0%. And then I'm not even saying in our lifetimes. I mean, I doubt we'll ever see 0%.
Ever again.
And yet we're now coming back to, what are we now? 3.1? Yeah, 3.1, right? It's not that bad, all right?
It's pretty good.
It's pretty normal, as we'd say. But, I'm not obviously, I do appreciate that it's impacted people 100%. And for the investors, because obviously this is an investment podcast, absolutely people have reduced. And I mean, some people, brokers that I speak to, they sort of estimate that maybe every 50 basis points or 0.5% increase in the cash rate is going to translate to about a 5% reduction in your borrowing capacity.
Okay.
So if you look at all the cash rate changes we've had over this year, 20 to 25% reduction for investment for a lot of people, for everyone. It doesn't really matter if it's investment or not, but 20 to 25% reduction. So it's absolutely there. And I think when we're coming back to this overarching question, which is what could make the year challenging, that could be a challenge. Now, once we get some stabilization, that's good, because a dilemma that I know a lot of people have right now is that they might go and get, say, a pre-approval, and then if it takes them 2 months to get a deal done,
they can't settle, ain't got enough.
Exactly right. It could have gone up, 50 basis points, or if it was a couple of months ago, it could have gone up a whole %. So then suddenly servicing doesn't match up. So that could be one challenge.
Yeah. But, you got to roll the dice and you got to be conscious and appreciate it. And it's to the point you made, Lachlan, is that there are some people, investors and own occupiers, hurts him because they entered into property in 2022, maybe a little bit earlier, thinking that rates wouldn't move until 2024. And the Reserve Bank of Australia's copped a fair bit of flack around this.
Yeah.
I do know, in defence of the Reserve Bank, we didn't know there was going to be a war in Ukraine then, and there's a whole bunch of impacts connected in with that, and that's part of the inflationary mechanism. But yeah, it's a very different environment, right? So if you bought or borrowed at the top of your serviceability capabilities and then interest rates go up 3%, which is passed on by the banks, there's people out there who are having to tighten their belt. And back to the point, the Reserve Bank's going to get 2 full months of numbers to see the impact of that belt tightening. Over the Chrissy period, the credit card numbers aren't out yet, but it'll be nice to know what spending was like over that period of time. I think most people are going to be entering 2023 thinking, okay, I'm going to start looking after things a bit more. We don't know what the impact of that is yet. So there are people hurting. However, there hasn't been a wholesale shift of distressed properties onto the market, and this comes to your supply side of things. There is, and we called this 3-4 months ago at Smart Property Investment Momentum, this period. And I called it a bit of I said there was not going to be any spring selling season. I said it's just going to be a flat and a stable market. And it's a market in equilibrium, which means that you haven't got this wholesale distressed people putting their properties on market. People have been able to weather the increase because the family balance sheets are so strong. I don't know what's going to happen next year. You're going to see belt tightening happening, but it's going to be the mechanism for slowing things down. Are you going to be some more supply on the market over and into the new year? I think it's going to be pretty steady as she goes. One of the biggest issues, we're now in this accelerated environment, and this is a challenging year. It's also an opportunity, but it's a challenging year, 2023, in that you're going to have spiked skilled migration. They need to leave somewhere. Good news for investors, you're going to have an positive uplift on rents because of supply and demand. More people are going to be needing your accommodation. One of the biggest issues is around building approvals and building capability. There's a whole bunch of builders have gone bust because they're on I'm generalising, fixed price contracts. They haven't been able to weather the inflationary cycle. It's hard to get a tradie right now. What's your view on the building side of things? How bad is it, Lachlan?
Look, I got to be really honest. I think it's really bad. And as we were talking about right at the start, and as I mentioned at the start, when I pretty much ever come on, I'm not a big fan of, building properties for investment, right? Yeah. But in saying that, building properties is what we need to do every single year for people to live in, for owner occupiers. I mean, obviously there's always going to be investors do it. My personal belief is from an investment perspective, it doesn't stack, 9 times out of 10, but it is necessary because we've got a population that continues to increase. And for me, I'm really worried for the building industry because firstly, they employ so many people, all right? They're a massive employer. And then there's also the subsidiaries that come out of it, right? You've got the builders, but then you have all the trades that then support it, from landscapers to brickies to plumbers, right? Like plumbers don't just come and fix your toilet in your 50-year-old house, right? They go and install plumbing as well. Yeah. So I'm really worried about it from a labor perspective because it is like everywhere is tight right now, but that is especially tight, the construction industry. I'm also really nervous about it because with inflation that's come about, it's the highest it's been since 1990. And look, I'm going to call it as well. A lot of this inflation is artificial, okay? It's not because we're in a really strong economic environment and things are going up. It's going up because our supply is really restricted, right? And that's shown because out of the inflation figures we just got, 75% of what made up that, I think it was 7.3%, 75% of that has come from goods, not services, i.e. the supply is the issue here. So as we continue to normalize that, that's hopefully going to help the building industry because inflation has gone rampant through that. And it's meant profitable projects are now unprofitable and break-even projects are now company killers, basically. Yeah. So I think more than anything, we've got to support the building industry, but we need it as well. And it's something I want to talk about in the next section that we go on with. But supply is so important from a long-term housing perspective. Now, if we don't have it, it's good for property investors because we're going to drive prices.
It's a lot of societal issues around it, right?
Absolutely,
yeah. Huge impact. And that's for our government to tackle, and whether they're doing a good job on that, that's your discussion. And we can leave it. I'm happy to have that discussion, by the way, and I think we'll do that in time. They're trying their best. But let's I don't want to be the merchant of doom and gloom. Let's talk about what is all that is good about 2023. We'll just go to a quick break. Stay with us. Back in a moment.
Want to slash thousands off your home loan repayments? Whether you're an investor or homeowner, we know how important it is to find the lender that suits your unique situation and with the best rate. If you've not compared your home or investment loan in the last 12 months, you may be able to cut your repayments today with a different lender. That could mean more money in your bank account and less stress when it comes to paying your loan. Find out why more borrowers are turning to Finny to refinance their home loans. Call us now on 1300 002 023 and find out what you could save, or visit our website finny.com.au to book an appointment.
Welcome back, Phil Tarrant, host of the Smart Property Investment Show, recording just after Chrissy had a great time over the break. Nice to reset and recharge, and I'm trying to do that right now. I've come to the studio to record the Smart Property Investment Show, coming to you on the Property Investment Podcast channel. I hope you're tuning into a whole bunch of stuff and spending this time over Chrissy to get stuck into the back catalogue of recordings on this. Pretty much anything you want to cover, we've probably covered it over 2022, but we're talking about 2023, and before the break, we're having a chat around all of those factors which make it a challenging year. And challenge, it's okay to accept challenges. Challenging is good, but how do you react and respond to it? Lachlan Vidler's joining me, Director of Atlas Property Group. Lachlan, why do you get pumped up over 2023?
I think it's going to be a good year. I think it's going to be the year of opportunity.
They say that every year, though.
I know, they do, don't they?
Yeah.
But no, I genuinely believe it for this year. I think the last few years, I mean, look, we're here to talk about property investment, right? The last few years, everything's done pretty well, right? You know, this last 6 months, sure, right? There's been a little bit of normalization. That's fine. But I think for the most part, 2021, most of 2020, things have gone pretty well. 2022, sorry, as well. Things have gone pretty well. And I think most people sort of, maybe they didn't expect it would go this well. But especially, you know, I think, for example, December last year, coming into this year, everyone was pretty bullish about property and going, this is going to be fun. I think 2020, Christmas time, running into 21, again, people going, this is going to be good. But I think this year, while I think it's the year of opportunity, I think it's really exciting because we're coming back to a normal market, right? And I think the first thing that really excites me by it is, you know, cream rises to the top, right? We've had a lot of people going out there buying properties themselves, a lot of people going out there using, you know, buyer's agents or whatever, doing it. And I got to be honest, I've seen a lot of crap. And I'm just going to call it out.
Crap.
Yep. I'm just going to call it out as I'm going to call it out bluntly, whether it's been through a professional or whether it's been themselves. There's been a lot of close your eyes, look at a map, throw it at the board, and it's turned out well. But people are then getting a bit of confirmation bias and going, this is going to be great. How good's that? And I'm excited because one, that should bring a bit of that. It should bring that demand back a little bit. But two, for those of us that say might work in the industry and they do a good job, I think it's going to be really great because, you know, when the tide goes out, we're going to see who's left without their shorts on. And, you know, I'm going to shamelessly plug a couple of our stats right now, since, you know, in the holiday spirit, right? We just,
I'll allow it this one time.
You'll allow it. I think this is probably the first time I've ever done it, right? And we were pretty excited when we did these. So we decided, right, maybe, who knows how we've gone, right? We'll just call it out. Who knows how we've gone? This is your
company, Atlas.
This is Atlas,
okay.
right?
Yep.
Who knows how we've gone? Look, properties have gone up. That's fine, but everywhere's gone up, right? How have we actually gone? So we decided to do a bit of analysis around that. So this is what we sort of came up with, right? Over the last year and a half, 2 years, right? It was 2 years. Our annual growth out of our properties was 21.68%.
At an aggregate. So you bought it for this together and it's now worth this.
Yep. So we've gone up 21.68, which is good, but of course, right? Someone's going to be listening right now going, everywhere's gone up.
Over what period, sorry?
2 years.
Okay.
Over the last 2 years. And that's properties bought 2 years ago all the way through to 6 months ago. So it was an 18-month period. But
so it's blended.
Yeah. But we took every property, looked at the growth it's had, and then aggregated it.
So that stuff that you probably bought 2 years ago probably grew by a lot more than that, but it's been pulled back from the more recent stuff.
Exactly.
And it's a moment in time as well.
Exactly right.
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
Some things, and that's why I like this, because it does take into account the fact that these were valuations done in December by one of the banks, right? So this isn't a real estate agent. This is cold hard. If you went to the bank, you could get this money, right? So valuations were done in December, and then it takes into account any dips or anything like that, all right? Over that same time, the markets that we were in for these properties grew by 9.78%.
Which markets are they?
All around, mate. All around. You're not going to get it out of me.
Try.
But I think more importantly, right, and this is, I guess, the thing I'm pretty proud to plug for once, is that what that translates to is that we have outperformed each of the markets we've invested in for these properties by, on average, 11.9%.
Okay, I get that.
Yeah.
So to interrogate it, if you're buying in a market, the market largely does the heavy lifting. The smart thing is about finding the right market to investing.
Yeah.
how have you outperformed the market? Have you bought better?
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to, right? We have such a strict analysis process that we go through on our properties. And for us, right, our name is staked against everything that we do. And I like to think my name personally is also staked against everything we do. So I think our asset selection, our analysis, our negotiating, right? It's not one, it's all things that come together. That's why I like this, because if we had performed at market level, you go, okay, well, you've gone up the same, right? Have you actually added any value to the process? Yeah. If it goes up 2 or 3 or 4%, in maybe a more normal market, you might go, that's not bad. But in this market, like, okay, again, have you added much value? But to outperform by just under 12%, to me, I love that, because I get to look at my team and I say, guys, you have done such a great job for our clients, because 12%, that's not something that just comes about by sheer luck, right? That's hard work from everybody going in behind the scenes and making sure that everyone does the due diligence, the analysis required to get an investment.
So how much of that uplift, outperformance of the market is because of what you've done before the sale versus after the sale? Like, have you talk about smart negotiation, smart asset identification, buying it at a good price, and probably buying at the right quartile of the property. Because you look at a medium, right?
Yeah.
That means two people above it, two people below it, right?
Yeah.
So you're buying above the median. How much of it is like spending a few bucks on it afterwards to do renos and all that sort of thing?
No, none. So in the selection that I took,
there's no manufactured equity.
No. In the selections that I took, I made sure that I wanted it just to be natural growth, right? Just let the market do it. I didn't want any properties that somebody's gone to and pump 40 or 50 grand into it to turn it into something else, or even 10 or 20, right?
Which is a good strategy, by the way.
Absolutely, big advocate, and a lot of the people we work with love that too. But I wanted it to be just a natural representation of buy and hold.
Yeah.
Right? What happens when you buy and hold in this? And, I guess I wanted to look at something interesting as well, because I said we stopped at properties that we bought in June, because I thought June through to December, it gives enough time. Yeah, exactly right. On average, those markets have only moved up 1%, which I think most people would go makes sense with what's been going on. Our properties have gone up by 8.3% on average.
Can you give me any locations?
Okay, I can't give you any locations per se, but...
Okay, how about I'll ask you yes or no questions.
Okay.
Capital or non-capital city?
Both.
Okay. Rural or regional?
Oh, how do you differentiate?
Rural's like in the sticks, regional is, I'm talking like big cities, big city regional.
Yeah, okay. No, we don't buy anything rural, nothing in the sticks, right? If we go regional, it's, your big city, you're talking 100,000, that sort of thing.
All right. Houses or units?
No units, only houses.
Okay. New build versus established?
Come on, you know the answer to that one already. Established.
Positive cash flow or negative cash flow?
Positive cash flow, but obviously as we come towards this end part of the year, some have sat more in the neutral bracket because of rising rates.
Okay. $400,000 average price points versus $700,000 average price points?
Across all.
Okay.
Yeah.
You give me nothing.
I know. But that's the beauty of it, isn't it?
Give me some states at least. Don't say all of them.
No, we've done a lot of buying over SA, Queensland, Vic, and New South Wales.
Okay.
Yeah.
Inner city ring or outer suburban ring? Mortgage belt versus more?
Oh, look, a little bit of a combination, right? Look, a lot of them, especially since there has been buying between, say, 400 and 700, right? You're obviously not buying in Sydney in the inner ring or anything like that. But no, it's a good mixture. I think ultimately what it comes down to is fitting client strategies, fitting client outcomes, and setting people up in their portfolio depending on where they are in the day. And that could be a 450, it could be a 600, it could be a unit block, right?
So what you're spoken like a true buyer's agent. Well, look, I guess you're gonna have to go and speak to him if you actually want to know what's going on. So you're pretty happy about 2023.
Yeah.
Like we spoke about these sort of headwinds, and these are tailwinds, right?
Yeah.
The fact that you don't have this wholesale shift of dumping property on the market, I don't think that's going to happen. Obviously, you've got this moment in time, and by memory, and again, I don't want to be the proponent of misinformation, but from what I understand, there's 3 major tranches of fixed rates coming off over the next period of time, and I think the first one is sort of early-ish in 2023.
Yeah.
And there's going to be some other tranches. And what that is, people get, again, there's a lot of alarmist media around it. If you're a smart investor, you would have planned for this, or you'd be planning for it. Go and speak to your mortgage broker, of interest rates coming off fixed rates at 2.7% into variable rates under the new regime at sort of 5.5, maybe 6%. So people are going to have to find a few bucks there. Whether or not you're going to see a dumping of property onto the market, I don't know, and I don't think so, because what you've got working in unison with that is this migrant connectivity, which is going to be more people come to Australia trying to choose Australia home, skilled migration and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So this should be, I think, an equilibrium for the property market in some way.
Absolutely. And look, now that we're done with my shameless performance plug, I will, it's a good thing that you bring up next on why, I am really excited for this next 12-month period, because migration, right? I was looking up just before we came into this year because I want to make sure I could come in with some hard numbers so people can actually tangibly feel it, right? Obviously, migration was pretty low 2021, 2020, right? Net gain of migration, right? So our total gain or total loss, right, to June 2022 this year, 171,000 people, which coincidentally also translates to a 171% increase in arrivals.
Yeah. Year on year.
Yeah. And departures actually fell. So people are coming and then they're going, oh, I don't want to leave, right? Yeah. So that gave us a total population increase of about 1.1%. And if you think about it, all these people have got to live somewhere. And when we come back to that whole idea about property is supply and demand, our demand might have started to come back a little bit, especially with the finance conversation we were having. But ultimately, supply remains so tight. There was a report that came out from a really big government body earlier this year that said, come 2030, or I think maybe it was 2032, we're going to be over 160,000 dwellings short, right? 160,000 dwellings, and that's going to be between now and then.
Based on the run rate of
exactly
the
right.
moment.
Yep. And when you think about the fact that we had 171,000 net gain people, and we're probably going to keep increasing that over the next few years, combine that with our organic growth rate of, births and deaths.
Yep.
Our population is ever growing. Last figure was 25.98, so we just missed under the 26 million.
Yep.
But we are not building properties fast enough. Everybody knows that that's in short supply, and that's getting worse. And I hate to say it as well, but that number of 160,000, that was actually made in probably mid-2020, late 2020. So that hasn't even accounted for the fact of what's gone on with the inflationary and supply concerns over the last 12-ish months. So I think the government the government will revise that next year, but I would not be surprised to see that go even higher.
Yeah, and the government's working at this, right? It is a really tough, difficult thing to get right. And you saw in a sort of mini budget that happened a couple of months ago, the government come out and they're sort of planning for building of affordable dwellings and more rental accommodation. Let's remember also that the government, irrespective of who it is, but in Australia, they incentivise property investors to provide rental accommodation for people. So they're working on it, right? There's a big difference between affordable accommodation and accommodation for punters. So, even at the state government level, they're trying to work out how do you, to get a DA approved in New South Wales, like 1,000 different people need to sign off on it. The amount of red tape and rigmarole around it needs to be streamlined, because if they want to shift, and I note the quality of buildings need to be right, and we've seen some horrible stuff happen overseas, and we've also seen horrible stuff happen in Australia around building quality and certification of them. Like, that's a big issue, but they've got to make it easier to build houses and all units and all whatever dwellings in Australia.
Absolutely. And there you go, another good number for you. In the most recent monthly data, building approvals across the country down 6% for the month, right?
That's not good.
And that's below the decade average, right? And when our population keeps getting bigger, our overall population growth keeps increasing as a percentage, and yet we're having less approvals than we were a decade ago, right? And look, that is a very
That's concerning and alarming.
Yeah.
And look, we're generalising as well, because, we're not talking at aggregate, we're talking at
it's a vanilla
percentage
perspective.
Of it. Yeah, it is. But, if Australia is going to capitalise on, and the government, Australia, the engine that is Australia, is moving towards this sort of being a digital economy, right? Like, this is the big thing, which means it's going to attract more people to Australia and all that sort of stuff. And, it's influential part in Asia, security issues and concerns aside. I'm sure you're familiar with this Davidson, I think it's Davidson window or Davidson gap, which says that there will be conflict with China in Taiwan within 6 years. I don't know what that means for a property investor, right? Getting outside of it, right? But this is the environment that regulators and bureaucrats and government policy decision makers need to grapple with, right? And it's not easy. It's not easy, and no matter what you do, you're always going to be hammered for it. So I say to the government, keep at it, keep working towards it, and you'll probably sort it out, or hopefully you sort it out. You're not going to get it perfect, but don't listen to the naysayers. Just keep the eye on the prize. But that's going to happen. But it comes back to Lachlan, what do you do about it, right? As a property investor, what do you do about all of this sort of stuff?
Yeah.
How do you become successful? How do you, at the tactical level, what do you do considering all the stuff we've spoken about? Most people would just be going, they're listening to a property investment podcast, so they're probably interested in it.
Yeah.
Most people just go, what are these guys yibbering on about, right?
Yeah.
What are you going to do to be successful?
Well, I don't want to overcook it or anything. I want to keep it nice and simple. And as soon as I say it, everyone go, oh, okay, well, yeah, it's all good and well that you say that, but what does that really mean? So for me, it's really simple. First thing you've got to do is you have to review where you're at, right? So if you're sitting down, with the family over New Year's, over this Christmas break, and you're going, all right, we own a property or a portfolio or we own none, right? Just review where you're at, okay? That might mean you go, wow, that was really confronting. Or it might mean you go, you know what, we're doing pretty well. Or it could be, hang on, we're doing okay, but maybe we need to, make some adjustments to what's going on. So first and foremost, you have to review where you're at. And what I would also say is if you're not really sure how to do that, ask for help, right? Whether it's, a family member, an accountant, a buyer's agent, whatever it is. If you need help, ask, okay? Don't be too proud to do that because pride isn't going to help you when you retire and you don't have the financial circumstances that you want. All you're going to do is say, I wish I'd just asked for help if I need it.
And I agree with that. The only point I would make, and this comes back to the PIPA work that you do, the Property Investment Professional Australia, the people who you ask to help you, make sure you pay them.
Absolutely.
Don't if it's free, question it.
Yeah.
Be prepared to pay for good help.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the relationship side of thing, right?
100%. And like you said, PIPA, so Property Investment Professionals of Australia, out there doing really good work to try and make sure the industry is working well. And at a board level, we are trying to do our best as well to ensure that anyone who you do talk to that works in this property industry, particularly at an investment sort of perspective, is operating with your best interest. And like you said, the best way to do that is if you pay them, 99.9% of the time, they're going to have your best interest at heart because you've got a commercial and probably likely a fiduciary, which is a legal resposibility between the parties.
Yeah. And if they stuff up, they got insurance as well and you go after them, right? Sure, they get it wrong, which is not what this is about. But so you got a baseline. I get that. I've done that myself personally. But then, and this is the sort of how to be successful in 23 from a tactical perspective.
Yeah.
So your strategy shouldn't change too much, I would imagine, on what you've been doing. There shouldn't be any real wholesale shifts. You shouldn't be the next shiny thing.
No, definitely not. And I think ultimately strategy is where most people get it wrong. Now, I know for the work that we do with clients, we have worked out a strategy and a method that we use that helps people build out their large portfolios, and it's working really well. And that's what we do. But other people, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that we are the font of all knowledge and we've got it all. We've got something that works, but there are other things that can happen. But whatever it is you're going to do, you need to work out what that strategy is. And what I'm going to say very clearly is negative gearing is not a strategy. Negative gearing is an outcome. So for anyone listening, obviously, this isn't financial advice or anything like that.
No.
But for anyone who's listening and goes, oh, I should negatively gear a property, remember it's a tax outcome, not a strategy. So you need to work out your strategy. And again, what I said before, if you either don't have the knowledge, you're not comfortable, you're unsure where to start, ask, talk to people, right? Talk to your neighbor, talk to anyone. What I will say is any advice you do take, let it do the pub test, right? Does it smell right? Is it seem okay? And also make sure that they, might have a bit of actual valid expertise to provide.
Yeah, I'll give our listeners a red hot tip when it comes to property investment. If it's simple and it's not sexy, it's probably on the right.
Yep.
It's probably on the right pathway. If you don't understand it and it sounds convoluted and complicated, probably not. It doesn't need to be hard. And this is the rationale of successful investors seize opportunities. They see it, but they don't get carried away with left of field thinking around it. You go back in time for property investors for generations in Australia, they do the simple stuff well and they are patient. I call it strategic patience. Don't think you're going to become a property investment millionaire overnight. It takes time. The sooner you start, the better off you'll be. You need to look through history and work out that property, irrespective of blips and bumps along the way, is a good asset class if you have time and you have patience and you have financial capability and you have the right people sitting around you. So the biggest issue is people hear this and go, that sounds great. What do I do about it? You got to be decisive in your decision making.
Absolutely. I think more than anything, the biggest thing that sets anybody apart, right? Whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're successful in your job, whether you're a good property investor, the people who achieve anything are the ones who take action, okay? And action looks different for everyone. If you're really smart, you understand how to do your investment analysis, you know what's going on, your decisive action might be, I'm going to go and buy a property. Or it might even be a little bit further back. I'm going to get my pre-approval to go and buy a property.
Yeah.
For other people, that decisive action might be, I'm going to talk to somebody for help. Or it might be, I'm going to talk to my broker to get a pre-approval. Or it might be, I'm going to actively start saving 10% of my paycheck from the first year. Whatever it is, you need to take decisive action and then commit to it. Because if you do that, that's the biggest thing that separates the people who achieve what they want versus the people who don't. And it's nothing more special than that. They just take decisive action.
Yeah, and it's simple, and embrace this adage of imperfect action always beats perfect inaction.
100%.
And it's so simple. Just, you're probably not going to get 100% right, but do something. 90% of winning is beginning, right? A lot of people sit there and they never, ever begin because they're so worried about getting whatever they do perfect.
Yep.
If you get it close enough in property, probably going to be all right.
I would prefer an 80% on-time decision than a 100% late decision. And I think, as you just said, with property, it's pretty forgiving. And if you can get that 80% right, now maybe you didn't buy on the most perfect street, or maybe you miss
it by a month.
Yeah, or you miss a leaking pipe or something, right? That's not going to be the thing that ruins a good investment.
Yeah.
Right. So an 80% on time is better than 100% late.
There you go. Well, you heard it from the man. So that's probably comes from your book, I would imagine.
You know what? I think it actually is mentioned in the book.
There you go.
Yeah.
I read it.
Did you?
Yeah.
Did you like it?
You sent me a copy of it.
I did.
It's called
A Military Guide
to Property Investing.
Yeah,
there you
surely
go.
is.
By, there you go. It's still available?
Absolutely. You walk into Dimmicks or come to our website, atlaspropertygroup.com.au.
You actually get it at the Dimmicks, can you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fully published book. We had great publishers.
Yeah.
Did some good work there. So you can go into, you get Dimmicks,
Well, unfortunately,
QBD.
everyone's missed it for Christmas, but it's a good New Year's Eve present.
Absolutely. New Year's resolution present.
Yeah, there you go. It's probably the best gift you can give someone is education.
Yeah.
There you go. And Lachlan's done all the hard work. It's Lachlan Vidler, Director, Atlas Property Group. Thanks for coming in today, mate. I know it's on your holidays, but you're a local guy, so that's all okay. It's nice coming over yarn. Always like catching up, mate. And thanks for all your insights over 2022 and look forward to what's in store for 2023. You give us the suburbs next year.
Oh, look, I don't know about suburbs, but I think ultimately it all comes down to you got to get the fundamentals right.
Yep.
If you do good analysis, you get the fundamentals, you make that 80% on time instead of 100% late, I think you'll do all right.
Get it done. Nice one. Thanks for your time, mate. Remember to check out smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. Smart Property HQ is where you find it. Lachlan and the rest of his listeners, clients are going to leave reviews on the podcast player you're tuning into this. Most of you on iTunes, please keep them coming. We get a real kick out of getting those reviews. It's nice to know that what we're talking about is resonating. We'll see you again next time. Until then, bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property, or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.
HR Leader is your source of news, insights, and more for HR, leaders, and people managers. Subscribe today at hrleader.com.au.